Hello everyone and welcome to the Sydney Listings Academy video on how to price properties when comparables are poor. So basically this video, while making it, I'm just going to acknowledge that I'm a bit unwell. I've got a bit of a cold, so if the voice sounds off, apologies for that. But such is our commitment to, trying to help with this education, that I'm just going to plow through. So I expect you to appreciate that somewhat. Okay. So outcome is to provide guidance when pricing a property that doesn't have suitable comparables, okay? And this is most suitable for owner-occupiers and property investors. Now, we've talked about normal pricing in other modules in Sydney Listings Academy on how to avoid paying too much for a property, what is a discounted property. I recommend looking at those two modules before you look at this one. They help you price property, if it's for rental, for sale, if you're selling, if you're buying, whatever. Those are very useful resources. This is about when you don't have good comparables to go off. In other words, there's not really many similar transactions or similar properties, or they haven't been sold as recently for something you're looking at. So these are the normal tools as we talk about in those other modules: listing portals, property data tools, asking a professional like us. But what do we do when we can't match things based on feature? We need to look a bit further. We need to get a bit more creative. So I'm going to go through some examples in Harris Park for rental and Gladesville for sale. But basically what we use is the ceiling and floor strategy normally. This is the way we go about it. Basically, the ceiling is going to be a property. It's definitely more expensive than the one we're looking at. So say a 5-bedroom house will be worth more than a 3-bedroom house in the same area. Whereas the ceiling, well, we know a 3-bedroom house is very unlikely to be cheaper than a 2-bedroom house. Again, making sure that they're in the same area, similar size and similar dwelling quality. So that's the strategy we use, because we know that once we've got a floor and a ceiling, that the value must be somewhere in the middle. Where exactly it is hard to find out without using the market to test it, for finding a buyer or finding a renter. But also, I would emphasize that the role of an agent becomes very important to put a bit of judgment in here normally, and really argue and fight for a value that you guys have put up to the market. So like I said, it's not an exact science, it is more of an art. So let's look at an example just to make this make sense a lot more, I guess. So we're going to look at Harris Park. Okay, say something located in Una Street in Harris Park, say a big 4-bedroom house, multiple stories, backyard. So for a house that big, there might not be that much that actually gets rented, which is probably what we find. Let's have a look at realestate.com. So I got $450 per week for something with 2 bedrooms, 3-bedroom, 45, single. All right, so we're looking at Harris Park. There's really not much that is similar. Okay, we get Prince Street, there's no price, and that's in North Parramatta. So now we're already out of the area. If you look at the suburb, that's right on me. All right, we check RP data as well. And we find a couple. There's something here that was in 27th of April, $700 per week. It's 4 bedrooms and 8 cars, not as many bathrooms as the example I have in mind. So we know that's going to get closer. We can look at the location, Albion Street, and see if that's better than Una Street as well when factoring that comparison in. But apart from that, all these others are lower because the property offerings are probably a lot poorer because they're mainly 2 bedrooms. There's another 4-bedroom, but only 1 car, 1 bathroom. $500 per week looks a bit smaller than what we're thinking of. So it becomes very hard. So then, all right, we're thinking about, well, what's our floor and what's our ceiling, obviously. So these sort of things will inform our floor value, all right, particularly this Albion Street one, because they're in the same area. We'd also probably look at other houses that are in Parramatta. The question really is, will someone rather rent this sort of property in Parramatta, or would they rather rent a bigger house in this area in Harris Park? That's why the floor gives us some indication. So we know it's going to be worth more than $700, for example, per week. Whereas as a ceiling, let's have a think. All right, it's actually the biggest sort of property in the area. It's in a great location. So probably not going to find anything in this area to be that ceiling. We're going to have to look outside the area. I would use, for example, something like Oatlands. because Oatlands has more prestige in the Parramatta region. There's nothing wrong with Harris Park. And you might argue that Harris Park has more functionality. It's super close to Parramatta, walking distance to Parramatta Station. But Oatlands definitely has the prestige. It has nicer streets, bigger houses, more modern houses and dwellings, and near a big private school in Kings. And there's a lot more to it. So let's think about Oatlands and look for ceiling comparables. Okay. So we go to Oatlands. We've got houses. We'll go minimum 3 bedrooms. All right. Even though we're looking at a 4-bedroom house, if we only put in 4 bedrooms, we'd cut out a lot of potential in our searches. So it's something you learn that comes with experience. So $530 per week. We've got one $730 per week, but it looks a bit small. But look at this one, $850 per week with a pool. Okay, so now we've got to be getting there. That one's way out of the ballpark, but this one looks like a decent sized home. That can be a comparison. All right, and if we look at it, slightly more modern than the one we're looking at in Harris Park. Again, you've got to remember though that this is someone's listed price. So this agent might have gone through the same process. You got to remember that. Whereas CoreLogic gives us actual results, this is a listed price. We don't know if anyone's actually going to pay $850 a week. So you always have to keep that in mind. But we know that it's probably a good ceiling, okay? And we're using our educated knowledge, looking at what else is available in this market here in Oatlands, just to think that that's reasonable, because we've got a $730 per week there. We've got bigger, nicer house. It's almost double. So that is probably a robust value. That's probably reasonable to go off. So if you ask the question, would someone rather pay $850 per week for that sort of house in Oatlands, or pay the same money in Harris Park? Most people would choose this property. It's got a pool after all, over the convenience of Harris Park. Then you think about how much lower than that would be kind of a good value for someone to pay in Harris Park. So in the end, our judgment call would probably be to go for around $750. That's somewhere between $750 and $800. We talk to the owner about that and figure out what exactly they'd want to achieve. But that's an example of that floor and ceiling. All right, so if you just give me a moment to go back. Okay. All right, so we've got Oatlands, maybe Rydalmere, and we've got smaller houses in the Parramatta region as our floor. Okay, we know the values in the middle. Talk quickly about Gladesville. So let's have a look, for example, at the map. All right, so let's go St. Paul Street in Gladesville. So I'm going to show you like a waterfront example, just talking generically, not talking about any house in particular. Think about the waterfront, how it's not really going to be comparable to where most sales are, which will be around this region. All right, we are much limited in terms of sales. If nothing's sold recently here and we're trying to sell a property in Powell Street, figure out how much we can get for it, we're going to have to start to use these tactics. So you might look at Putney and think, okay, well, is Putney more or less valuable on the water than Gladesville? So it's got a ferry wharf in terms of views and look and feel and prestige. You might argue that it's on par. You might argue that it's more. I think they'd be pretty much on par. Whereas if you think about, just quickly, you got some of these other areas that are definitely, say Woolwich, for example, much more prestigious. Not as maybe convenient for in and out, but people in this area are looking for a particular lifestyle. That's comes with the prestige of the area, the nice big trees that line the streets, meet in the middle, very nice big houses, a lot of sandstone style, some great eating options. So you wouldn't imagine that that a house of similar size and features and views, let's not forget views, you probably get much better views from here, I would assume. They're not going to pay more necessarily to live here when they could just go and buy in Woolwich. Okay, so that's a quick example. Obviously, we talked through Harris Park, more nuts and bolts, but that's just a quick example about thinking about realistically what would the value be for between if we can't really pinpoint exactly what it is just from comparables, and we kind of have to use a bit of judgment. Okay. So that's there. Okay, Woolwich, waterfront properties in Gladesville and Putney, you're going to give us that idea of a floor value there. General rule of thumb is that the less comparables that are available, the more likely it is that you need to use a professional. Okay, so I'm just going to jump on the whiteboard quickly here. So what I mean by that is if we had a graph, sorry, this is a bit crude, but if you've got a number of comparables or comps here, and then you've got needing an agent. As you all know, my handwriting is terrible, but you'll have to forgive me. So if you've got lots of comparables, your need to have an agent is going to be very low. Whereas if you've got, sorry, that's 0. If you've got if you've got very low comparables, then the likelihood you're going to need an expert is much higher. And that's basically because you need people who are experienced to know, for example, you need to know that that area is more prestigious than this area, that most buyers in the market will prefer the luxury of a suburb just a bit further from Parramatta, but then the convenience of being in walking distance, okay? Because that sort of lifestyle is more about driving. They have different types of jobs. They don't get public transport. It's all those sorts of factors. So professionals who deal in the marketplace regularly just have a lot more access to that knowledge because they deal with people more often about property decisions. And so it's hard to beat that, self-educate on all that to the extent that an agent has. All right, but just the other notes to wrap up, the usuals. Always consider your exit strategy, your worst case scenario, your own situation and factors. That's if you're selling, that's if you're buying, that's if you're renting, if you're a landlord renting out. These are always the important things, all right? The value is a bit vague and it's hard to determine the true value. You don't always just have to take that listed price and not question it. You have to think, or what someone gives you as a price. You do have to do your own thinking, but always weigh up these things, even in the face of, in the face of uncertainty. All right, so if there's more questions, feel free to reach out or follow us at Sydney Listings, the website, or any of our social media platforms. Just a disclaimer, this advice is generic, not to be used by individuals. Take no liability for misuse of this information and encourage you to seek professional advice specific to your situation. But obviously you can reach out to us to get in touch with our network if you want someone that we can recommend for anything, any professional service. And again, obviously this content is free in one respect, but it's not in terms of the price is to share if you find valuable the knowledge with your friends, family, or your own followers. And then you can, like I said, follow us on the platforms just to stay in touch with what we're doing and with the next insights to come out. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll talk again in the next video.